On a recent trip to Hainan, I came across clay braziers made by Lee potters for cooking over charcoal. That got me thinking, could I make a simple barbecue? I've got some leftover terracotta clay, so what could go wrong? I'm using about 2.5 kilos for the vessel that holds the charcoal and around 3 kilos for the base. I'll start with the base. I start by centering the clay. If I was struggling to center 3 kilos of clay, I'd center half the clay first, add the second piece of clay, center it, and then center together. Once the clay is centered, I flatten the clay. And then I push down into the clay and open out. I compress the base of the clay. And now I form the walls. As I pull the walls up, I'm bringing the walls inwards. I'm creating a bit of a volcano shape. Every time I bring the walls up, I'm compressing the rim. And now I can straighten the sides. I trim around the base. And then I wire through and set aside to dry to leather hard. With the base out of the way, I'm ready to make the charcoal dish that will sit on top. So the charcoal vessel is a rounded dish with holes in the base for ventilation. So I center the clay, I then flatten the clay and push down into the center of the clay. Then I open out and I form the walls. I shape into a rounded dish. I use my flexible rib to shape the outer curve of my dish. And then I wire through and dry to leather hard. And I'm ready to trim the base. I upend and center. Now, all I have to do here is trim across the base and around the edge a little. And now I smooth and compress with my flexible rib. I flip the pot over and I mark out the air intake. And then I cut through with a knife and I give it all a bit of a clean up. I must say the clay is just a little drier than I could hope for. I tidy any rough edges with a sponge. And now I'm ready to trim the charcoal dish. So I center, and then I fasten with some lugs of clay. So I didn't need to do this with the base. It was a little heavier and pretty much would stay in place by virtue of its own weight. I'll be trimming more on the charcoal dish, so I want to make sure it stays firmly in place. So I'm getting in there and really rounding that bottom edge. Now that's important for even thickness of the walls. And that's about it. I'm going to smooth the base and compress. Now I bring the base back onto the wheel and I'm going to use it to hold the charcoal dish as I make the holes. So these holes will allow air to flow through to the charcoal and get the charcoal burning. I'm using a medium-size hole cutter. It's cutting through the clay fine, but I am aware that the clay is just a little on the dry side. And finally, I tidy up and smooth any burrs. And that's it. I'm ready to fire to the recommended temperature. It's a once fire, so it includes the bisque cycle and then up to that temperature. So my grill is fired and now it's time to fire up the grill. I'm using lump charcoal. I add the charcoal to the charcoal dish and I start the fire. This is pretty exciting to see the barbecue in action. Luckily, it's a very still evening. So the charcoal is lit. And then I hear it, a loud crack. There's a large crack down one side of the pot. It's really disappointing. Although it's disappointing, I decide to push on. I have a brazier full of flaming charcoal, and I still want to see if the overall concept is a good one. So I let the charcoal get to the smouldering stage. And then I add a barbecue grate. This is a lightweight titanium grate. I let it heat for a while. And then I add some kebabs. So by now, the clay charcoal dish must be getting super hot, and I hear another crack. The base has cracked, of course, at the weakest point, where the cutout is. At this point I have a hose ready and some welder's gloves. And it's a little tense as we cook the rest of the meal. So that's what could go wrong. Thermal shock. So clay expands and contracts as it's heated and cooled. Where this happens unevenly within the material, the clay cracks. Exposure to a direct flame is very uneven and rapid, so it is kind of risky. I have a few things in mind for my next attempt. One, I'll definitely pay more attention to the clay I use. I'll choose something with a little more grog. A more open structure may help prevent cracking. And then there's thickness. I might try making the walls quite a bit thicker. I've come across a Moroccan brazier that is considerably heavier. I could also modify design so there's less stress. I'm not surprised that the pots cracked where there were cutouts. And I might consider how the charcoal sits in the vessel. So I'll keep on with this experiment. Potentially, I'd like to be able to use my terracotta cooking pots over a charcoal fire. If you haven't already done so, check out my terracotta pot making videos. I get it right in the end. In the meantime, I hope you found this video interesting, and as always, happy potting.